Good morning or good evening or good night, depending on where you are. Reflecting on the International Youth Day we prepare to celebrate, I was led to consider that youth is the title, it's the title in English, even for the Italian version, of a deep and sad movie directed by acclaimed Italian director Paolo Sorrentino in 2015. Despite the title, it's not a movie about youth, but it's a movie about old people who refuse to grow old. Set in a Swiss hotel for rich people, a place of sadness almost by definition, the film tells the story of a movie director who refuses to accept that by growing old, he has lost his magical touch and dreams of producing a last masterpiece, and of a composer and conductor who doesn't want to perform any longer since his wife succumbed to dementia. And even when Queen Elizabeth asks him to perform, he refuses. One is led to understand that the movie director is the one who had still some hopes. Yet when his movie project collapses, he ends up committing suicide. While the composer reconciles with the reality of his wife's illness, and in the end does perform for the British Queen, who of course in 2015 was an icon of old age herself. In most, not all, of his movies, Sorrentino tells the same story, that it's difficult to grow old, and we are haunted by memories of years we wasted and opportunities we missed. This leads me to mention an entirely different film, and certainly a less intellectual one. Perhaps for this reason, it earned more than 1 billion at box offices internationally, against only 23 million of Sorrentino's youth. I'm talking of 2011 Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, and I confess I like the series. This was the 4th installment of Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was about an often told story, the search for the fountain of youth, a spring supposed to restore the youth to anyone who bathes in it or drinks its water. Although historians have found precedents going back to ancient Greek times, the film has it right when it tells us that the idea of the fountain of youth may really exist, comes from 16th century Spanish explorer and first governor of Puerto Rico, Juan Ponce de Leon, or at least from his biographers. They claim that by studying Native American legends, the governor located the mythical spring in Florida and tried unsuccessfully to find it. In Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, the fountain of youth is found, but is destroyed while different parties fight for it. Generations of artists and novelists have been fascinated by the fountain of youth, which is a powerful metaphor of the universal dream to avoid old age and death. The bad news is that there is no fountain of youth. The good news is that in a way we can all obtain the benefits promised by that mythical fountain. Devotees of many religions believe that we will depose our mortal bodies, but will not die, we will continue to live in one or another form. But even atheists believe that our good works will survive us. Hippocrates, the founder of medicine, who lived between the 5th and the 4th centuries BCE, wrote at the very beginning of his aphorism, Obios brachus ed techne macra, which the Romans translated in Latin as vita brevis, ars longa. The life is short, but the art is long. Although Roman philosophers read it as a moral criticism of those who waste their life, Hippocrates wanted to underline that the results of the arts, in this case the art of medicine, he called medicine an art, will continue to benefit humanity long after those who discovered them had died. This is also true for the works of the visual arts. We keep appreciating them after their creators are long since dead, and for the construction of just political societies. And Catholic Pope Benedict XVI once said that the most beautiful work of art is a saintly life. Last month, some of us gathered in Taipei to celebrate the 80th birthday of the Shifu Grandmaster of Taiji-Men, Dr. Hong Dao-Tzu. At 80, a man may be called old without offense. Yet Dr. Hong impressed everybody with his youth-like vitality, which no doubt also derives from his mastery of Qigong. Perhaps whether Dr. Hong is old or young is not even the right question to ask. He has found this fountain of youth anyway, and he has taught us that it's not in some remote jungle. It is inside us, and it's called conscience. Dr. Hong has lived a beautiful life and created monuments of beauty and wisdom that will remain forever, and keeps creating them. So did his Ditze, who lost their youth by fighting for justice, but in fact found it, and in turn created beautiful lives. For a Christian, this is reminiscent of Jesus' teaching in the 16th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, that those who just want to save their life will lose it, but those who lose their life for the sake of truth will find it. Lives lived in conscience and for truth and justice are so beautiful that they will remain forever, and will remain forever young. As English poet John Keats famously wrote in Endymion in 1817, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. With these words, which of course strangely allude to Qigong, where the quiet breathing is the key to many things, I will open our webinar, and before passing the podium or the virtual podium to the first two speakers, I will ask our technicians to launch the first video.
Graceful phoenixes send blessings of love and peace at the World Leader Summit of Love and Peace and International Love and Peace Gala. It is one of the events of the World Conference of Mayors, the United Nations of Mayors, held from August 3rd to 6th at Hilton New Orleans Riverside. The gala gathers mayors, government officials, and important leaders from around the world to make dialogues about advancing peace and love. The president of Vopal, Dr. Hong Daozi, encourages all participants to act with their conscience in order to create a sustainable future.
让我们以良心、与愿力，为自己、为他人、为世界的安全与永续发展付诸行动。天助助者，宇宙的正能量，并将引领地球迈向永续发展之路。
It is my honor to present to him now the Peace and Love Award.
The president of the World Conference of Mayors, WCM, as well as a former mayor, Johnny Ford, present the first Peace and Love Award of WCM to Dr. Hong in recognition of his contributions.
Thank you.
Because he is the voice and the face of peace and love around the world.
Dr. Hong presents Certificate of Appreciation of Cultural Exchange and the Compass Clock of Conscience to some mayors and other leaders in appreciation of their effort on peace and inclusion of their communities.
For love and peace.
During the gala, a solemn ceremony of ringing the bell of world peace and love is held, and 2 bell ringers make a commitment for a better world.
I've never experienced anything like that. And I've experienced a lot of things in the world, but that was so awesome to be able to ring the bell to show peace and unity and love. And so I want to just say thank you all for the wonderful responsibility that life has given you to be able to share love and peace around the world.
In the end of the event, all participants dance and sing together regardless of different cultural backgrounds. As people's hearts are one, they can work together to make cities of the world united and peaceful. Elali Chelsea Chan, New Orleans.
Thank you for the beautiful video, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe I recognized Robin Liang, who is a contributor to our webinar, dancing in the video. Without further ado, I will now introduce the first speaker of the first session, Dr. Daniela Bovolenta, who is a contributor both to our webinar and to Winter magazine. So, Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Massimo, and hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. In Italy, we say that every summer we have a tormentone. This is an expression meaning literally a great torment, but is in fact impossible to translate. It indicates a discussion going on for days and days about something that perhaps it is not so urgent and important, but occupies the otherwise lazy afternoons of Italians on the beach. This year, it is about an article entitled On the Train to Foggia with Young Lansquenets, published in Repubblica, Italy's second daily newspaper by circulation, on July 23rd by Hélène Elkann. The author, Hélène Elkann, is a 73-year-old Italian journalist who happens to be the father of John Elkann, the chairperson and majority shareholders of Italy's largest industrial conglomerate, which controls the Fiat Chrysler Automotive Group and dozens of other companies, including the daily newspaper Repubblica, on which the article appeared. In the article, the older Elkan told the story of how he boarded the business class carriage of a train going to the southern Italy city of Foggia, and found himself surrounded by teenagers. Presumably, they were from well-off families since they could afford the business class ticket. Elkan described himself with his custom-made linen suite, trying to take handwritten notes with his expensive fountain pen while reading the Financial Times in English and a volume of French writers Marcel Proust, In Search of Lost Time, obviously in its original French. But he was mightily disturbed by badly dressed teenagers that seemed interested only in soccer and girls. Elkan compared them to the dreaded Lanzknechts, the crude Renaissance German mercenaries who came to Italy and destroyed the entire cities and countless works of art without even understanding what they were all about. The article generated hundreds of answers, some humorous and some indignant. Repubblica journalists staged a protest claiming the article had not been approved by the editorial board and had been published only because the author was the father of the newspaper's CESNUR. Some reminded Elkan that he also has a younger son who has had serious drug addiction problems. Ryanair issued an advertisement imagining Elkan seated in one of its noisy but happy low-cost flights. It is unclear to me whether the story was in the first place true. Elkan claimed that the boys used the expression, let's go look for girls in nightclubs, which has been out of use for at least 40 years among teenagers, would mention discos, but certainly not nightclubs. The debate was, however, in its own way serious. Some considered the author an outmoded elitist, full of himself and his own privileges. Others saw in Elkan someone who was finally brave enough to say what many happened to think, namely that social relations have increasingly deteriorated and good manners have vanished. For the latter, the old journalist had become the bearer of a few crumbs of styles, culture, and elegance, all legacies of a better time. Both positions have a part of truth. On the one hand, I was left with the impression that Elkan was worse than the boys he called Lanzknechts. He was nutty, irritated because the rest of humanity also got on his train, stricken in pride for not being greeted, but more importantly, for not being recognized. After all, the boys did not do anything illegal or criminal. In a country where on some train routes, women, men, and even railways employees are routinely harassed and assaulted by drug addicts and aggressive beggars or immigrants who travel without a ticket. I was tempted to say that all my sympathy went to the kids. But that might have been a mistake, and I wondered whether perhaps we have become so used to bad customs that they seem normal to us. I have considered the question, and the answer is no. That is not the point of the incident. The point is that goodness, civility, politeness are not empty shells that stand on their own. They are the fruit of a worldview, of a hope for the future, of lives rooted in conscience. How could a world that proposes to those young people nothing but the immediate satisfaction of every instinct, extreme individualism, and consumerism, the wiping out of every legacy of the past in the contemporary cancel culture, no greediness, either human or divine, expect them to shape themselves from the outside and to cultivate a horizon of fountain pens, linen suites, formal politeness, and love for the French classics? One can ask whether the ultra-liberal, permissive culture advocated by Elkan himself and the newspaper Repubblica is somewhat responsible for the states of affairs. But the question is much broader. In Europe, those forms of politeness and elegance whose disappearance among the youth Elkan regrets were forged throughout the centuries by monks and scholars who knew their Latin and Greek classics and were at the same time inspired by the values of Christianity. I cannot but compare Elkan's Lanskenets, from whom perhaps some politeness was stolen by a society without values, spiritually or hope, with the Taijimen young Dizzy described in the book Who Stole the Youth. I am sure that the young Taijimen Dizzy are normal young men and women interested in music, sport, and romantic relationships, as are all young people around the world. Yet, as the book explains, they were willing to devote for years most of their spare time to educate themselves on tax and law reform issues and protest in the streets advocating for justice in the Taijimen case. Are they different from other young people? Yes or no? They did what they did, not only because they and their relatives experienced injustice, but because they had been educated by Taijimen, their leader, Dr. Hong, to rely on conscience as the moral compass for all their actions. But everybody has a conscience, although not all realize it. Like everyone else, I too have I had in my life moments of irritation at the rudeness of young people around me, and yet I wonder if it is not necessary to look at these boys and with other eyes, to see the good in them, to promise them horizons of meaning and spirituality, to consider that they too have a conscience that can be awakened. From this awakening, I am sure, would also spring more courteous forms, more urban manners, more cantons. The Taijimen youth offers a good example that when ideas are proposed to young people, they resonate in their conscience and many respond positively. It is impossible, on the other hand, to deceive young people by demanding that they adopt outward forms that are now meaningless to them, perhaps for the sake of some old snob who would like to travel by train without the entanglements of the rest of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela Bogolenta, for this reflection on a case indeed has tormented Italians for several weeks and applying it to the theme of our webinar. And now we pass the floor to our second speaker, Dr. Carolina Maria Klotkowska, who is a researcher at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland, and is familiar with the Taijimen case, having participated in several of our webinars before. Carolina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for the introduction, and good morning and good evening to everyone who are listening to us. I started with in the introduction to today's webinar, Professor Massimo Introvigne invoked the motive of the fountain of youth. The concept of a fountain holds not only the meaning of something from which one draws, seemingly endlessly, but also the idea of wellspring from where the water or another substance emerges on its own. It is something active, life-giving, a source from which the element essential for life can be drawn. This fountain of youth is a source of inexhaustible energy, or at least it would seem that. If youth is associated with the energy in the form of a fountain, then the early youth and childhood are its true volcanoes. Inner children within adults are untamed sources that years of socialization have molded according to various societal and cultural norms and frameworks, often leading to individuals being burdened with the unwanted limitations of their freedom, especially when they live in the less fortunate circumstances. As a mother of 2 young children, I have constant contact with the children's literature. Beyond the everyday life of a parent, sometimes reading new books for children serves an excellent lesson, reminding us of what it's like to be a child, a teenager, or a younger individual with a different generational experience. One of my favorite characters in the children's literature, who is also a remarkable philosopher in its own way, is Sandwolf. He is a character from the series of children's novels written by Swedish author Asa Lind. The book narrates the adventures of a young girl named Zakarina, who befriends a semi-mythical and magical humanized golden wolf inhabiting a nearby beach. The wolf explains to her that the grand mysteries of universe, as well as the smaller matters of daily life. He clarifies that the bruises on one's legs are medals for bravery, and also that sometimes adults do not have ill intentions, but have simply completely forgotten what it's like to be a child. One time, Sandwolf asked the girl what happened to her, and it looked like she had turned into a fossil. No, but according to Mom and Dad, I feed and kink too much, Zakarina said, especially at the table. Of course, too much, Sandwolf snorted. It's easy for them to say. They're grown-ups and they've already forgotten. Forgotten what? Zakarina asked. That when you're growing up, something fidgets and kicks wildly through your whole body, like popcorn, Sandwolf said. You know it, I know it, and every tiny little tadpoles know it. But the grown-ups, they've stopped growing and they've forgotten what it feels like. Sandwolf gave a hop, started jumping like on the trampoline, and sank at the top of his lungs. A little human won't sit still like a grown-up turned to stone. A person who devoted a significant portion of her reflections to this inner youthful energy was Maria Montessori, one of the most renowned and distinguished educators in the world, and also a prominent member of the Theosophical Society. Although she formulated her educational system almost a century ago, it remains one of the most relevant and popular alternative pedagogical systems globally, continually gaining new admirers. Montessori advocated for following the children, being attentive to their sensitive periods, and teaching subjects to which the child is most receptive and engaged in the state of flow at a given moment. Montessori recognized the natural inclination for engaging in their particular activity, the desire for independent repetition in a continuous cycles with the maximum concentration. She employed these observations to develop tools that supports this state. However, that is what is most intriguing from the perspective of this unrestrained yet purposeful child energy is Montessori's concept of horme. In her book, The Absorbent Mind, which was published in 1949 by the Theosophical Publishing House in Adyar, she wrote, "The conquest of independence begins from the first commencement of life. As the being develops, it perfects itself and overcomes every obstacle that it finds in its way. A vital force is active in the individual and leads towards its own evolution. This force has been called horme. The hidden essence of childhood lies within every child, containing an innate urge. Turned as horme, this instinctive vital energy compels the child towards self-development or self-education. This is the foundation upon which the child's intellect is constructed. To stimulate development, it is essential for children to actively immerse themselves in their surroundings and be free to explore and to interact. As we can see, development and freedom are inseparable from the very beginning of the human life." In the introduction to the book, her son Mario wrote that her purpose was to unveil the distinct cognitive abilities inherent in young children. They allow them to autonomously build and firmly establish all of the facets that define their human personality within just a few years, even without the presence of educators or conventional educational tools, or in the circumstances they might feel neglected or hindered. This phenomenon stands as one of the most profound enigmas of life. In the context of the International Youth Day, we may ask, what happens to this drive and all of this energy a few years after? While the mind's abilities are already developed and shaped, What kind of environment nurtures further development that allows a person to grow up as a person? What challenges are faced by today's youth? For the first question, it is easier to answer what kind of environment does not work well. It is implicitly mentioned in this year's theme for the International Youth Day, Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World. It is perfectly understandable why the focus is on sustainability and the natural environment. But let me also look into social environments, which of course are very different from each other. From a report of a company devoted to online research in Poland, the group IQS, called The World of Young 6, we learned that currently in Poland, 75% of young people are worried about the situation in the country, 25% does not want to have a child in Poland, and 20% have emotional problems. In 2018, in their book, The Coddling of the American Mind, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure, Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt discusses the danger of the overprotection as a significant characteristic of today's society. The authors looked for the sources of the situation and described the so-called great untruths. Amidst the multitude of the erroneous theories, in order to be designated as a great untruth, a particular notion needs to satisfy three conditions. It must run counter to ancient wisdom concepts found in the writings of various ancient civilizations. It must oppose the conclusions drawn from the modern psychological studies focused on mental health, and it must have a determinantal impact of individuals and communities that adopt it. The mentioned great untruths have spread and dominated humanity in recent years. And they are, the first is the untruth of fragility. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. The second is the untruth of emotional reasoning. Always trust your feelings. And the third is the untruth of us versus them, meaning life is a battle between good people and bad people. In the Teijiman case, it is evident from the outset that the social context disciples encountered during their formative years stood in the stark contrast to this to overprotection, as their fundamental human rights were disregarded. The current webinar's focus aligns with the title of the book, Who Stole Their Youth?, which was first published in Chinese in 2020 and later translated into English. From this perspective, the book sheds light on the disease protest against unlawfully imposed tax bills and documents that challenges faced by the Teijiman members as they confront the authority of the state and unscrupulous bureaucrats in Taiwan. However, it is worth noting that even a cursory examination of the teachings and practices, as well as the entire history of the Teijiman case, shows that the young Dizzy did not become victims of the great untruths. It is evident that the difficulties they encountered did not lead to a stance of resignations. Quite the opposite, in fact. Dozens of individuals have dedicated years of their lives to studying law and other subjects related to legal tax reform, aiming to contribute to the resolution of the situation and to develop themselves as individuals in alignment with the Teijiman's ideals, despite the immensely challenging circumstances. Teijiman teaches to listen to one's conscience rather than blindly relying on every arising emotion. And last but not least, although the situation of violence and baseless accusations may seem morally clear, Teijiman does not construct a dichotomy between us and them, between good and bad people. Instead, it employs all available means to fight for its rights while simultaneously engaging in continuous efforts for the betterment of humanity and the world peace. Lastly, I would invoke Sandwolf once again, who stated that a young one would not sit still like a grown-up turned to stone. It is to be wished that that being an adult does not necessarily entail the immobility of stones, but rather the pursuit of the ethers or even a volcano of energy. Or at the very least, that the transformation into stone when we grow older does not carry a moral aspect, and it is not associated with the coldness and emotional detachment. Unfortunately, this inhuman coldness seemed to characterize the bureaucratic apparatus of Taiwan when it deals with the Taiji man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina, for this broad panorama ranging from Swedish children book to theosophical pedagogists to Dr. Hong and to the great untruths that Dr. Hong teaches, of course, how to avoid. With this, I believe that we conclude our first session, and to introduce the second session and the second movie, I will now pass the podium to Willy Fautré.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I will start with a few introductory remarks to this second session before showing the video, and then afterwards I will give the floor to the Dizzy, as usual, who will share their feelings and their testimonies about the thematic of the day. So today is in 1999, almost a quarter of a century ago, that the 12th of August was declared UN International Youth Day. The UN General Assembly recommended that public information activities be organized to support the day as a way to promote better awareness of the World Programme and Action for Youth adopted by the General Assembly 4 years earlier. This program encourages youth around the world to organize activities to raise awareness about the situation of youth in their country. This year's theme is Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World. It is indeed important for young people around the world to preserve the future of our planet and their future. Today, the world is embarking on a green transition. A successful transition towards a greener world will depend on the development of green skills in the population. The essence of green skills is sometimes expressed through other associated terms, such as skills for the future or skills for green jobs. While green skills are relevant for people of all ages, they have heightened importance for younger people who can contribute to the green transition for a longer period of time and hereby protect the future of a safe and hospitable planet. The Earth is under threat of ongoing sins perpetrated by human beings and humankind. Pride, greed, jealousy, anger, lust, gluttony, and laziness. They are the so-called 7 deadly sins condemned by Christianity, but they can be more or less numerous in other religions or identified and named differently. Their common denominator is, however, the same, as it is a common denominator, and it is selfishness. Climate change, threatening the future of humankind and the lives of millions of people, is the consequence of selfishness. Family education and school education have failed to uphold, to keep alive and healthy, to transmit traditional values to the next generations. This has resulted in a host of evils, individual and social problems, which take on considerable proportions and become unmanageable. Human beings have become insatiable consumers of material and immaterial goods, which are supposed to make them happy, whatever the cost for others. Humility, generosity, patience, temperance, a sense of sharing and bearing the burden of others should be the hard core of any form of education for children and teenagers. Dr. Hong has integrated these dimensions of education of the disease, which has made them smiling to life, happy internally, open to others, and ready to help those in need. Throughout their testimonies, you will perceive the reality and the beauty of the seeds that Dr. Hong has sown in their minds. The green skills for youth to move forward towards a sustainable world, which is the UN motto this year, International Youth Day, can also be spiritual, and maybe should be spiritual first, as it is the power that transforms the material world. And now I think it's time to watch the video. Thank you. And afterwards, I will give the floor to the disease one by one.
What are the top 2 leading causes of disability worldwide?
What are the 2 main causes of disability around the world, according to the World Health Organization? The first is cardiovascular disease, and the second is depression. One concerns the tangible heart, while the other the intangible heart.
It's surprising that most illnesses have to do with the heart.
What accounts for 90% of diseases? Stress. When I first began practicing Qigong, my master kept telling me I had to work on my temper. I pondered, why? What does that have to do with my physical health? I didn't get it then. Years of Qigong practice finally made me realize that many things had to do with our emotions. If you improve your temper a bit and become a little calmer, you'll find that your health truly improves as a result.
What have we learned from this pandemic?
We can learn a lot from this pandemic as well. What did the virus teach me? First, let's be joyful. Which one is the second? Living simply. The third is solitude. Everyone is alone in the end, so we must take good care of ourselves. I've been practicing Qigong at Tai Chi Men. It's really easy, convenient, safe, and effective. Can I still practice it when I get older? Yes. When you get old, will you still be able to run? Most likely not. This might not be doable. Finding a routine that you can stick to in your senior years is crucial.
With a healthy body and mind, do you want to live an amazing life?
Your efforts will undoubtedly be crucial to your success. But what is even more important? Making choices. That's even more significant. What core values influence your decisions? If you believe you have a true self, you'll work for it and make decisions to help the world altruistically, without expecting anything in return. You'll gain from that in the long run.
Do you believe you can live as your true self?
We practice Qigong at Tai Chi Men. Our master wants us to know our true selves well and understand the meaning and purpose of life. We should cherish our own lives and make the most of our brief existences here on earth to create our infinite value. We should seize the present moment, make plans for the future, and work hard for our future, visible or invisible.
Are you willing to change for your true, inner self? Life, diversity, wisdom, and more. Children grow up healthy. Guiding youth to think positively. a better understanding of the meaning of life, willing to endure hardships for their ideal and learn to persevere for their future. Vendors at night markets acquire an optimistic outlook, beaming with joy through Qigong practice, enjoying the relaxation of the body, mind, and spirit.
Self-improvement practices like those at Tai Chi Men, in my opinion, are not just words, rather, they have demonstrated happiness, which I believe to be quite significant. To embody such joy and bliss is the key.
Tai Chi Men Dizzy, ages 7 to 90, have led more fulfilling lives by improving themselves. We invite you to start changing together and meet a better you.
I'm sorry, I had a connection problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we hear you.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry, I had a connection problem, so I am back. Was the video shown?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now I will introduce the first Dizzy, who is Sarah Wang, Shipping Industry Specialist Business Department. Floor is yours, Sarah.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Sarah, and today I'm honored to be here to share my experience. I've practiced Tai Chi Man Qigong with my family since I was 5 years old. Tai Chi Man is a big family where people take care of each other that I always consider here as another home. Tai Chi Man always plays a very important role in my growth process. Not only do we practice Qigong, my Shifu, Dr. Hong, teach me many philosophies, which to tell the right from wrong, true from false, and good from bad. These are the most essential values of personality education. From being a shy, non-talkative, and unsmiling person since my childhood, with the encouragement of Tai Chi Man's brothers and sisters, I gradually started to change and learn to break through my barriers. This transformation has made me different from my past, and today I have the courage to share with all of you here. And our Shifu also teach us the importance of conscience. As the world citizens, behave with conscience and fulfill the obligation of rights with love and peace, then we could help this world to be better. Growing up in Tai Chi Man has provided me with many experiences that are different from those of young people in my age. I have participated in many culture exchange programs in Taiwan and abroad with Tai Chi Man Cultural Goodwill Visiting Group. In 1999, over thousands of my brothers and sisters in Tai Chi Man followed our Shifu to Seattle to participate in the Seafield Torchlight Parade, one of the top 10 parades in the United States. At that time, I was very impressed that nearly 100,000 citizens of the tourists on both sides of the street, they are shouting, "I love Taiwan, I love Tai Chi Man," when the Tai Chi Man parade went through. Everyone showed their enthusiasm and their love for Chinese culture. In 2012, I had the opportunity to attend the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio +20, and its surrounding events in Rio, Brazil. The theme of that year was Global Sustainable Development in the face of the climate crisis. During this event, I met President, Head of State, officials, and many others from different countries. Each of them was very happy to meet my Shifu. Regardless of nationality, race, or language, they are all like-minded friends, with a heart filled with love, peace, and a desire to help the world. We invited them to ring the bell of world peace and love. The sound of bell is still full of emotion deeply in my heart. Tai Chi Man absolutely is an international goodwill ambassador on behalf of Taiwan. In addition, growing up in Tai Chi Man has made me to gain a deep understanding to the issues of the legal and taxation system in Taiwan. The injustice and unfair treatment that the Taijimen case has endured for 27 years has motivated me to stand up for justice. What are the highly unreasonable aspects in the Taijimen case? First, the incident started when prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren received the blackmail. He abused his power to illegally search the Taijimen academies. There are only about 10,000 NT dollars in the account, but the National Taxation Bureau issued tax bill of 3.2 billion NT dollars without any other evidence. The same amount of money was taken as the tuition fee at the cram school, which had been illegally sent to the National Taxation Bureau without conducting any actual investigation, and the National Taxation Bureau directly used the prosecutor's indictment as evidence to issue the tax bill. And how can the same income be said to be illegal income from fraud, but also said to be business income, so need to be taxed? Next, in 2007, Taijimen case was already ruled by Taiwan Supreme Court in favor of Taijimen with verdict of not guilty and no tax evasions. The Control Yuan investigated Hou Kuan-ren's handling of Taijimen case and highlight 8 major violations, especially using indictment as evidence. This is inconsistent with the rules of evidence, but the National Taxation Bureau ignored the judgment by Supreme Court and continued to impose unjustified tax bill. The National Taxation Bureau has made a foundational error in taxation since the beginning of this case. And in accordance with Article 18 of the Convention of the Protection of the Freedom of Religion and Belief, and General Commitment number 22, and Articles 53 and 113 of the Law of Enforcement of Injustice of Taiwan, the property should not be seized. However, the National Taxation Bureau continued to issue tax bill and even illegal auction of Taijimen's land. Can the power of National Taxation Bureau override the power of Supreme Court? Third, since the establishment of Taijimen Qigong Academy in 1966, the nature has remained unchanged. According to the letter of 1997, the Department of Education of Taiwan, Qigong and other schools are not compatible with the purpose of short-term cram school, and according to the regulation, they are not allowed to be filled as cram school. However, the National Taxation Bureau has only targeted 6 years, issuing tax bill for the period of 1991 to 1996. After years of administrative reminders by Taijimen, the National Taxation Bureau finally corrected 5 of these tax bills to 0, but left one of the year 1992 alone. This is highly unreasonable, as the nature of Taijimen Qigong Academy has never changed. How could it suddenly be considered as a cram school for only 1 year? Last but not least, Taijimen has been visited 101 countries and over 300 cities, participating in more than 3,000 cultural performances. This activity has contributed to promoting international diplomacy. Taijimen has been invited 10 times and participated 8 times in the celebrations of Taiwan National Day, receiving commendation from several government leaders, including 4 President of Taiwan. However, behind such praise from the government, the National Taxation Bureau, which also represented the government, appears to contradict these 4 presidents by labeling Taijimen as the tax deficient group. They continuously use false tax bills to insult Taijimen. In fact, Taijimen not only has no tax errors. Over the years, my shifu and all brothers and sisters in Taijimen participated in these activities in Taiwan and abroad at their own cost, without any sponsorship. However, Taiwan government has not given any support, but have been persecuting Taijimen through illegal tax bills. During my childhood, it was my shifu, shimu, brothers and sisters in Taijimen, and my parents standing on the front line to fight for the case. They didn't want us to live under this injustice. However, 27 years has passed, and I have grown from a 5-year-old girl to now being in my 30s. This case is still not solved. I have also taken to the street in front of the presidential office many times to protect the injustice of Taijimen case. The baseless tax bills have tormented us for 27 years, and our human rights continue to be violated by the government. that making me feel sorrowful and disappointed. Singapore's former Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew once said, "Once you let someone without integrity rule the country, it's finished." I hereby appeal to the Taiwan government to take this issue seriously. Because the government has the public power entrusted by citizens, it should uphold the principle of conscience, morality, and integrity to govern the country. Not only should the Taijiman case be resolved immediately with fairness and justice, but also the reform of legal and tax must be duly carried out. The country tax system is closely related to its economy. By doing so, the younger generation can see the hope in Taiwan, rather than feeling compelled to study and work abroad, suffer from a continual brain drain. I also hope that we can keep insisting on justice and do the right things in order to make this world better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us, among many other things that you exposed, that Dr. Hung's fundamental teaching shared with his disease is to distinguish right from wrong, true from false, and good from bad. These are the most essential values in his education of young people, that they can perpetuate it generation after generation, not only in Taiwan, but also abroad, as Taijiman has visited 101 countries and over 300 cities, participating in more than 3,000 cultural performances. Hereby, these activities have contributed to promoting international diplomacy of peace and love. Thank you for reminding us about that. And the next speaker is Bobby Chen, storyboard artist. You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Greetings to our dear friends who have been tirelessly advocating for human rights issues. Dr. Massimo Introvigne, Mr. Willie Potre, Ms. Daniele Valenta, Dr. Carolina Hayes, and all dear global citizens who have gathered here today. I'm honored to be with you all. The theme of International Youth Day of 2023 is Going Green Towards a Sustainable World. However, creating a sustainable world is not merely adopting green practices. It involves unearthing, resolving root problems that hinder sustainable progress. I am Bobby Chen, a storyboard artist based in Canada. I translate details of life into impactful visual stories to spread positive energy. In a world where many of our young generations choose to comply with the system, my Sifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, encourages us youths to educate ourselves, to be knowledgeable of our surroundings, to understand sustainability, human rights, and peace movements, to engage in meaningful events, and to broaden our vision. I've made little postcards here. It shows that planting some love to share with everyone. And also here is, it says, "No war, please." Here is Ukraine and Russia's flag, and with the peace sign. Yeah, it's all inspired by Dr. Hong. And so as a Taijian Dizi, my Sifu truly has inspired me to become a dedicated human rights and peace activist and a lifelong volunteer at various related NGOs across Taiwan, Canada, and the US. So we see that UN data shows half of the people on our planet are 30 or younger, which is expected to reach 57% by the end of 2030. A survey also shows that 67% of people believe in a better future, with 15 to 17-year-olds being the most optimistic. It is crucial for our government to reflect this diversity of age, culture, and ethnicity for true inclusivity. However, with so many youths globally needing to be more informed about their society's complexities, we must self-educate, discern issues within our nation's system, and take action. I believe that one would be guilty of being so naive to believe and follow whatever the government says without truly justifying and understanding the reasons behind each action, especially in a country where the government wishes to blind the citizens to the harsh and ugly truths of the same government system where millions fall victims to. Only by revealing and addressing these deeply rooted systematic obstacles can Taiwan reclaim a sustainable justice system and democracy. I remember that the words from Professor Chen Zilong, who shared during our recent visit to the 228 Museum, when he said that when a nation lacks respect for human dignity, it cannot be called a true democracy. Professor Chen referred to the historical figure Lu Longqi, a Qing dynasty official who identified three significant failures within the Qing government. So first of all, number one is old cases. Number two is same old corrupted officials. And number three is corruption. The Taijimen case demonstrates how the judiciary can fall prey to these same pitfalls due to Taiwan's judiciary's disregard for human rights. The wrongful verdict in the 1992 Taijimen case remains uncorrected and saw the illegal seizure and conversion of Taijimen's land into a state-owned property. This is a classic instance caused by an outdated old cases, old officials, and corruption system. What I have described is merely the tip of the iceberg, a fraction of the numerous cases that have been breached the service for public scrutiny. One can only speculate on the volume of victims and lives that have been silently submerged, lost to the corrupt judicial system within Taiwan, a system manipulated for years by a powerful few. This oligarchy has been leveraging its power to distort laws, fabricate evidence, and control news media. These actions are more than mere abuses of power. They are shackles that choke Taiwan's progress toward becoming a fully fledged democratic nation. They undermine the principles of justice, equality, and transparency that are the bedrock of any robust democracy. We, the youth, I believe that are responsible for uncovering the truth and alerting the international community to these issues. This call to action is to gain strength to end this deadly cycle of corruption that has persisted for generations in Taiwan. My heartfelt thanks again to our dear friends and all the dedicated professionals advocating tirelessly for human rights on a global level. So thank you so much, so very much.
Thank you, Bobby, for sharing with us some interesting statistics. As according to the UN, 50% of the people on our planet are 30 years old or younger, and they are expected to reach 57% by the end of 2030. It means the future of our planet and humankind is in their hands. It is therefore appropriate to draw the lessons from mistakes made in the past and today, such as in the Taijimen case. And at the level of Taiwan, it is crucial for the government to reflect this diversity of age for true inclusivity. The expectations of young people are to be better informed, you said, about the complexities of the society, but also that the government truly explains and justifies its policies with regard to the current and future challenges. And now I will give the floor to Lillian Liu, a graphic designer. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm Lillian. Today, in the capacity of someone who cares about the world's youth, I'm participating in this online forum, hoping that the world can become better through the efforts of each and every one of us. In a few days, August 12th will be the United Nations designated International Youth Day, which aims to encourage youth to actively engage in public affairs and also calls on governments and society to value the role of youth. Because the youth are the future stewards of the nation, the potential they possess and the contributions they can make to the world transcend any single group. So here I want to share with you an unforgettable event I participated in a few days ago, where I took a big step forward in my life and contributed a small step towards the progress of the world. Last month, from July 6 to 7, I had the privilege of being a representative youth volunteer for FOPAL, which is the Federation of World Peace and Love, and attending the 17th United Nations International Youth Assembly held at the ECOSOC Chamber in the United Nations headquarters in New York. The event brought together representatives from various fields, including the United Nations Human Rights Council, Nobel Peace Prize laureates, the legal community, military and police sectors, academia, non-governmental organizations, and youth representatives from up to 54 countries. The aim was to unite the strengths of nations and strive for a truly just and dignified world of oneness. Having this opportunity to broaden my horizons in this way stems from the most important role in my life, which is being a disciple of the Taiji Men. Joining this academy at the age of 10 transformed my life trajectory. It turned me from someone who was once timid, lacking confidence, and pessimistic into a person who began to believe in love and peace and the beauty of all things in the world. My Shifu, Dr. Hong, not only established the Federation of World Peace and Love in 2000, but also selflessly led his disciples and people around the world to practice love and peace. Over the span of more than 20 years, nearly 10,000 days have passed in pursuit of this mission. In the bits and pieces of Taiji Men, I was born from the harm of campus bullying and the cruelty of human nature. It also helped me, who once didn't know the purpose of life, find the direction of life and the value of self. My Shifu, Dr. Hong, a great sage who has changed the destinies of countless people with his life and true love, taught me to dissolve hatred with love, taught me to bravely face all challenges in life, and enabled me to completely bid farewell to past pains. I learned how to love myself, love others, and to believe again. The encounter with Dr. Hong is like a miracle in my life. However, Master has endured relentlessly persecution from the government for nearly 10,000 days, and even came close to experiencing a catastrophe that could have wiped out from our academy. The burden behind this love is a heartless persecution and contempt for cultural beliefs by corrupt officials. Even though the Supreme Court had already ruled in 3 trials on July 13, 2007, that Taiji Men, a martial arts group inheriting the Taoist essence of over 6,000 years, is innocent and tax exempt, the National Taxation Bureau continues to forcibly levy taxes. In 2020, they even illegally auctioned off our spiritual practice site and forcibly confiscated it. I'm deeply unwilling. I just couldn't accept that the country that I grew up in, under the banner of democracy and the rule of law, could be so arbitrary and unjust, trampling and harming a spiritual practice group of tens of thousands of people, and harming a master who has made significant contributions to the world and humanity. It callously consumed over 20 years of time, taking away countless lives and precious moments, and obstructing a spiritual practice group's journey towards love and peace. Yet, Dr. Hong bears not a trace of resentment. Instead, he transformed the pain and this injustice he endures into love. He has traveled to over 100 countries, more than 100 countries, promoting a culture of love and peace, helping more people and hoping to awaken the conscience of humanity, ultimately aspiring to realize a world of true love and peace. On this occasion of the International Day, I'm here to use the Taichung case as a reference, earnestly reminding people to value and uphold human rights. We should not turn a blind eye to the threats faced by young people in terms of basic rights, freedom of speech, culture, belief, and association, especially when they have nowhere to turn for help, particularly in the pursuit of faith and culture. When these rights are deprived, not only does it stifle human growth, but it also diminishes the richness of global culture. Therefore, as members of the youth, there is an obligation to participate in advocating the importance of justice and fairness, to become catalysts for steering the world towards positive change, to dare to identify problems, solve them, and take responsibility. I remember one of the speakers at the United Nations International Youth Assembly, Fabio Amacarelli, the director of humanitarian programs at the International Church of Scientology, used significant statistical data to encourage young people. He said, "Believe in what you're doing. You can trigger significant changes in the world. The world needs you. It needs your commitment. Human rights must become a reality, not an idealistic dream. Human rights belong to everyone of every faith and race." As he stated, even if one's power may seem insignificant, it is enough to shake the world. The road of human rights has no end. It is a continuous journey of effort and progress. Even in the face of persecution, Dr. Homai Shifu still instructs us, his disciples, to uphold the spirits of love, of loving our country and our people, and to courageously step forward to peacefully and justly appeal to the government for reform. Just as today, on this meaningful day, I recount the tragic persecution of faith with a heartfelt voice, harnessing the power of the internet to raise an international voice, hoping to unite the strength of all young people, just like those who participate and listen in this online forum. And in those online forums, we share the same faith, hoping for a peaceful world, believing in the path of human rights, believing that the world will become better through our gradual efforts. Looking forward to all young people joining us in advocating for genuine reform in a peaceful and just manner to respect culture and belief. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lillian. You said, and rightly so, and I will quote you here, we should not turn a blind eye to the threats faced by young people in terms of basic rights, freedom of speech, culture, belief, and association, especially when they have nowhere to turn for help, unquote. For sure, it will be the mission of your young generation to participate in advocating the importance of justice and fairness, to become catalysts for steering the world towards positive change, to dare identify problems, solve them, and take responsibility. The road to human rights has no end, your master said. It is a continuous journey of effort and progress, even in the face of persecution. But your fight for justice must always be carried out in a spirit of love and peace. Thank you for your testimony. And I will now give the floor to Howard Kwan, a university student. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Howard, and it's my pleasure here to share my viewpoint with all of you. The concept of mutual respect, whether taught in school or government, by societal morality is the most fundamental human right. If you violate the human rights of others or societal norms, your conscience will question you. These moral norms supplement the portions of the law that cannot be regulated. But what about when we're observers? In reality, if we look on indifferently and tolerate wrongdoing, we will encourage wrongdoers to believe that they may do whatever they want as long as no one stops them. Nowadays in Taiwan, because the government has established tax incentive and administrative bonuses with no legal basis. Some officials have resorted to unscrupulous means to bill people indiscriminately for taxes, asking them to pay a little bit or more. And if they do not pay, they will be sent to compulsory enforcement. You could imagine that if the government has this kind of chaotic utterance, the people would have long since protested to fight for their own rights and interests. True, there are legal tax volunteers standing on the streets and Kaitagolan Boulevard in front of the presidential office to express their dissatisfaction. However, many people are unaware that they are victims or that this type of situation is occurring in Taiwan, and they invariably become the uncaring and indifferent observers. Contributing to the victims' continued persecution by the illegal judges, while people who observe victims' persecution in the news and on the internet may feel sad for them, but they may want to point out that they are a small minority of cases and that the same thing doesn't happen to them. There will still be 30,389,937 cases in 2022, up from 1.9 million new tax and fair arrears enforcement cases in Taiwan in 2001 to 14.31 million new cases in 2020, a 7.53-fold rise in 20 years. These figures illustrate the fear and anxiety felt by more than half of Taiwan's population, as well as the government's apathy to mistakes, which has resulted in a steady stream of affected homes. Is that possible that more than half of our population is breaking the law? Many experts and intellectuals believe there are numerous incidents of false conviction in which people's families have been ruined. As a result, the government should not carry out repossessions, auction of people's properties, or restrict people's ability to leave the country. All of these are acts of state aggression that violate the people's fundamental right to life. Isn't the right of the people liberty, property, freedom of movement, and so on guaranteed by the Constitution? In Taiwan, Ms. Zheng purchased a home but owed $48,000 in land value tax and housing tax. The administrative and enforcement department began collecting the tax, but because they were unable to reach Ms. Zheng, they decided to sell the resident to balance the cost. The clerk summoned the police and the locksmiths to open the door to the house to investigate. But in the bedroom, he discovered lifeless bones with their clothes still on. The cashier initially assumed it was a white bone toy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a mound of white bones and skulls. Because there was a pot of charcoal on fire in the residence, it was assumed to be a suicide. Ms. Zheng was identified after an inquiry by the prosecutor. The house's reserve price was cut from 4 million to 2.56 million, or nearly half the amount. The most famous case is the Taijingmen case, which began with a prosecutor who experienced abuse of power, and the IRS continues to issue tax bills in defiance of the court's ruling of innocent and no tax, and has remained unsolved for 27 years. In addition to the prosecution of the case itself, as well as the misreporting of the case by the press and media at the time, tens of thousands of families in the case have not only suffered from the effects of the case, but have also been subjected to the discrimination and accusation of all those involved. And the scars left behind by the victims in the case will never be cured. Yet the perpetrators of the crime have been elevated to greater position with no punishment, which is completely contrary to what we have learned in school, at home, in society, and even in law. Of course, this is not the only example, and there have been many other victims who have suffered similar injury. I am a 太极门弟子, and what my 师父 told us is that to pick the proper way by identifying right from wrong. We are born ignorant, but we gain a lot of new knowledge through our families, schools, workspace, societies, and the internet. However, lack of understanding sometimes causes us to be bystanders in silence. Because we don't know about it, we don't think it is irrelevant to us, and we don't get involved in it. Each of us is an observer at first, but as we gain understanding, exploring, and discussing, we gradually become people who are involved. When a baby is born, if it doesn't receive the love and care of parents, it is only a witness by the tragic family of an observer. But it is precisely because our parents carefully care for each of our children that we can become a member of a unique family. There is no shame in being a bystander at first, nor is there shame in not knowing what is true and what is false in a new field. As long as we are willing to learn about it and be a part of it, we will be able to know what is right and what is wrong and go down the right path. The United Nations hope to cultivate green skills among young people on International Young Day in 2020 in order to move towards a sustainable world. And I believe that the long as well all become participants in various fields and have some knowledge and ability in various fields. I believe that the whole society can grow and thrive with each other. And in addition to have an extra layer of protection for ourselves, it also inhibits the growth of evil force. And I believe that we can work together to create a better society and let a future in which everyone is wise, sustainable, and a fantastic future would be around the corner. Thank you all.
Thank you, Howard, for focusing on the concept of mutual respect, whether taught in school or governed by social morality. It is indeed the most fundamental human right. When people violate the human rights of others or social norms beyond the legal norms, their conscience should question them. If their conscience does not awaken, it means that there was a serious problem in their education, and this failure must be repaired by the state and society. We cannot just look on with indifference and tolerate wrongdoings. Otherwise, we will encourage, as you said, wrongdoers to believe that they may do whatever they want, as long as no one stops them. Thank you again for your contribution to the debate. And now I will give the floor to Ruby Liu, freelancer that we know very well. The floor is yours.
Hey. Hello, my name is Ruby.
Hello.
I'm currently a freelancer. In view of the changes in the international situation, the structural problems that abound in Taiwan society in the post-pandemic information explosion era, as a youth, I'm disturbed by the pursuit of a profit-oriented environment, which is not conducive to the survival of this generation, especially for young people. Therefore, I'm going to express my viewpoints on how youth consciousness rises in turbulent times in the forum of International Youth Day. Last year, as I was about to graduate and enter the workforce. I opened a job search website to find employment opportunities. To my dismay, the job listings on the platform were filled with various societal issues. The country's primary economic source relied heavily on technological development, resulting in an uneven distribution of industry resources due to long-term policies. Many sectors were facing labor shortages and the wages were too low, causing the youth to opt for a passive lifestyle. In Taiwan, it seems like pursuing dreams and ambitions had become a somewhat ludicrous idea. I have encountered people asking me, so where do you work now? And immediately following up with, is it in the tech industry? It was as if survival depended on working in a specific field. I realized this was the reality, but my consciousness urged me to live according to my own values and not be bound by societal norms. However, the prevailing public opinion in Taiwan seems filled with distrust. Parents encourage their children to study abroad, believing that Taiwan was on the decline. So after graduation, many people discuss whether to stay in Taiwan or study abroad for better prospects. The education system influences issues like low birth rates, labor shortages, and brain drain. Nevertheless, living in Taiwan, I know the many wonderful things this land has to offer. Studying abroad is not a bad thing, but how can we allow a government lacking efficiency and capability to erode the most genuine values? How can we let boundless fear pervade the hearts of the youth in this new era, all the while saying that there is no future in Taiwan? Indeed, there is still much room for improvement in Taiwan. In April of this year, 12 international scholars came to Taiwan to hold a forum, conducting on-site investigations of Taiwan's governmental structures and engaging in constructive discussions with government officials, using the case of the Taijiman human rights persecution as an example. They emphasized the significance of judicial transitional justice and pointed out the tax-related loopholes in the case. The tax persecution in this case has been pending for many years without resolution, clearly demonstrating a lack of respect for judicial rulings. Camelia Marin, the project coordinator of Soteria International, stated that the Taijiman case vividly illustrates instances of abuse of power within the national system. The court's verdict has not been enforced, leading us to face a form of administrative persecution, or one might even say corruption. I had the opportunity to participate in the scholars' visits and assist as a photographer. Throughout the process, the scholars expressed curiosity about Taiwan's democracy, legal system, and other aspects. I also sensed their concern for human rights persecution events taking place worldwide, including cases of religious or belief-based persecution. In late July, 7 international human rights scholars from 5 different countries once again visited Taiwan. They toured the 228 Memorial Museum, and many of these scholars expressed concern about Taiwan's transitional justice process, overlooking cases of persecution during the post-authoritarian era. They particularly highlighted emblematic cases like the Taijiman human rights persecution. These cases occur in Taiwan, a country known for its democracy and freedom, and yet, after 27 years, it has not received complete rehabilitation. I believe that the government is aware of the truth, but is afraid to confront the authoritarian past. However, with learning civics class that law is the minimum moral standard, but even the government can violate this basic ethical principle. How can the people trust the actions of the government under such circumstances? I also take this opportunity to urge the government to courageously face its mistakes and break free from the culture of mutual protection. Decisive action should be taken to revoke all unlawful tax decisions and do what is right. July 13, 2023 marks the 16th anniversary of Supreme Court verdict of Taijiman case. During the forum, Dr. Hong Dao's Zhangmen of Taijiman stated in his speech, time has proven that justice is a path that requires love, courage, and perseverance to walk upon. Since my childhood, I have been practicing Qigong in Taijimen. My Shifu Hong Dao has guided us to share our observations and thoughts, encouraging us to boldly express our ideas. The 6 words, good and bad, true and false, right and wrong, serve as guiding principles for a spiritual cultivator's lifetime. In this age of information explosion, it is even more crucial to discern right from wrong and to perceive the truth. When I was not familiar with the details of the Taijiman case, I used to question why we needed to take the streets. Is it really the right thing to do? Is it effective? Yeah, as I personally took a stand in society, advocating on the streets. What followed was a wave of voices from the wronged and voiceless victims. During the 16th anniversary of Supreme Court verdict forum, Attorney Wang Jian'an, the Secretary General of the Taiwan Tax Law Academy, also mentioned that the efforts of volunteers who worked tirelessly on the Taijiman case indirectly contributed to the reform of Taiwan's tax laws. In the past, officials from the National Taxation Bureau were not well versed in the practical execution of taxation laws. And now officials are making efforts to enhance their legal knowledge. In November of last year, I participated in the 23rd International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in India alongside the Taijiman Goodwill Cultural Group. During this event, Dr. Hong Dao, our Shifu, also delivered a speech for World Day of the Power of Hope. He encouraged global systems to act with conscience, and harness the power of hope for themselves, for others, and for global security and sustainability, so that the positive energy of the universe can lead the Earth to the path of sustainable development. During the conference, it was inspiring to see students from city Montessori schools, regardless of their grade level, confidently express their thoughts during speeches or interviews about the power of global development. It will also mention only conscience, education, and culture can endure for centuries and influence future generations to change the fate of humanity. Being in Taiwan, I'm grateful that we still live in a society where we have the freedom to read and express ourselves. On International Youth Day, I urge everyone to start from within, consciously pay attention to the areas that concern them, confidently voice their opinions, and not be afraid to express their thoughts. Of course, when faced with information that needs verification, pause, take a look, and think about it. That's led by the principles of goodness and peace, striving together to create a better environment. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry I had a connection problem again. You have finished?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Really?
Thank you.
I'm asked to make a correction, and it's in Sarah's paper. She inadvertently said that 100,000 people greeted Taijiman at the Seafair Torchlight parade in Seattle in 1999 by shooting I love Taiwan, I love Taijimen. but she misread the figure. It was not 100,000 bystanders and tourists, it was hundreds of thousands, plural, bystanders and tourists. So more than those listening to Sarah may have understood, and she asked me to make this correction, and I execute.
Thank you, Massimo. So thank you, Ruby, and sorry for the interruption again of the connection. So as a young person, you said that you were disturbed by the pursuit of a profit-oriented environment, which is not conducive to the survival of this generation, especially for young people. You were with us when we, a group of scholars, toured the 228 Memorial Museum at the end of July, so just a few days ago, and expressed concern about Taiwan's transitional justice process, overlooking cases of persecution during the post-authoritarian era. You also learned in the civic classes that law is the minimum moral standard, but in reality, even the government can violate this basic ethical principle. And you also attended an event on the 13th of July in remembrance of the 16th anniversary of the Supreme Court verdict acquitting Taiji Men of tax evasion and any other wrongdoing, you said. And on that occasion, Dr. Hong stated in his speech, and I quote him, "Time has proven that justice is a path that requires love, courage, and perseverance to work on," unquote. And finally, you participated in another event as well, the 23rd International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in India in November last. So I think you are on the right track, Ruby. Learning, learning, learning by yourself as a freelancer, as you introduced yourself. You are on the right track to put into practice the principles told by Dr. Hong wherever you are, and you will be in the future. Thank you for sharing your testimony with us. And now I will give the floor back to Massimo, who will introduce Marco Respinti for the conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. And yes, we have a video with some conclusions by Marco Respinti, who is an Italian scholar who serves as a director and journalist, who serves as director in charge of Bitter Winter.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, especially to CESNUR, the Center for Studies on New Religion and Human Rights Without Frontier, who co-host these series of webinars. And thank you to all the scholars who brought new light on the Taiji Men case, and of course to the DZ, who brought their personal testimonies, always very important. And especially on these days in which we celebrate the United Nations International Day of Youth. As a way of concluding our webinar today, I would like to share with you some thoughts and reflections. There are in fact a few points that scholars and guests and testimonials repeat time and again during this series of webinars about the Taiji Men case. Of course, this does not happen because our imagination dried out and we have nothing left to say, just the contrary. The goal of these webinars, is to raise concern on that blatant case of injustice that we call the Taiji Men case, advocating for its rapid solution. We regularly repeat a few of its outrageously distinctive points to underline the absurdity of what has been done to a group of innocent people and the irrationality of the suffering that has been and is being imposed on them. Wasted time is chief among these. Wasted time or stolen youth, as the title of today's webinar correctly says, in its turn drawing from the title of an important book on the case that I recommend to read. The concept of stolen youth directly and seriously indicts those who have deprived an entire generation of young women and men of all the beauty and gifts of their age. It is the generation of the Taiji busy or disciples that has been growing up while the Taiji case unfolded from December 1996 up to this day. This means that more than a quarter of a century of persecution based on lies that have been repeatedly declared false by all levels of Taiwanese justice, and yet cast their dark shadow of sorrow on the whole movement due to some corruptly dull bureaucrats. This is one of the outrageously distinctive, absurd, and irrational points that our webinars routinely stress on purpose. The fact that all these under the age of 30 basically grew up pursued by persecution and lies and were bullied and discriminated for the simple reason of being Taiji disciples is another outrageously distinctive, absurd, and irrational point that we always underline. Sometimes we can hardly believe our own utterances. Few of those living in what we call the free world, an endangered concept, and sometimes a rather ambiguous one, which yet retains an important value, know what it's like to be considered bad for the mere fact of belonging to a certain group. The violence of all this is hardly understandable for those who have never suffered it, and it is literally incredible when we see it performed in front of our eyes. An entire generation of Desi have found themselves totally immersed in a climate of suspicion and hatred for all their lives. They hardly know anything else. They needed to defend themselves for the whole life. They needed to give explanation for what they are, and often the explanation did not persuade those who preferred to believe the lies spread through the media. As our groups have experienced too, this is what it means to be labeled cultists. Many regard cultists as people belonging to obscure group that do obscure things to obtain obscure goals. And a cult, they would say, we know nothing about it, but we know it is dangerous. You are a cult. You are a devious sect. Your Shifu and your leaders are necromancers who raise goblins. You are liars and deceivers, and you steal from the community by evading taxes. You are bad. These are the epithets that are thrown on Taiji Shifu and Desi by those who do not listen and do not know and prefer to repeat slogans and empty words. And these are the words that an entire generation of Desi, all those who have less than 30 years of age, and 30 years is a huge span of time in the life of a person, have been obliged to bear every single day of their existence. An entire generation of Desi was born with a mark of scorn and contempt, with a stamp of despise, with the label of being second-class citizens. We have seen it before in history with tragic consequences, and this is why it must stop immediately. This is a stolen youth and a wasted time. Of course, this generation of Desi learn how to smile, enjoy their humanity, appreciate freedom, but they had to do it amidst frauds and lies, using their time and energy to counteract ignominies, while they should have been able to use that same time and energy for constructive goals. Time does not, in fact, come back. And this is the major theft that an entire generation of young people guilty solely of being innocent has had and continues to endure. Time, devourer of everything, and you, hateful old age, You destroy everything, and bit by bit you consume all those things that have been mangled by the teeth of the passing age. This is a quote by Latin poet Ovid, who entrusted these hard and poignant lines to his Metamorphoses. As Ovid said, time destroys everything. Things pass and they are no more. Nothing comes back. What is gone is gone. What passes is past, and what is lost is lost. In Ovid's metaphor, you hateful old age is not, of course, intended as an offense against elderly people. It is a symbol of corruption, to be contrasted with another symbol, youth as a spiritual condition. Youth is, in fact, the symbol of life, spring, birth, while oldness may become the symbol of decay. As Ovid said, oldness consumes youth itself when youth is not lived as a hope. This is perfectly shown by the young man Dr. Hong Tao Tse, who recently turned 80 and is younger, much younger than several biological young people. We can, of course, extend this concept to all human beings, to all Tajimendisi, be they young, adult, mature, or aged. All of them have been deprived of their youth. Ovid's symbol of youth and oldness go, of course, beyond biological age. They symbolize a condition of the spirit and an attitude toward life. Persecutors are old, hardened, obnoxious hearts, while innocent victims are as young sacrificed lambs, no matter their age. Stand back, be silent, be still, that's it. And look upon this moment, savor it, rejoice with great gladness. Remember it always, for you are joined by it. You are one under the stars. Remember it well then, this night, this great victory, so that in the years ahead you can say, I was there that night with Arthur, the king, for it is the doom of men that they forget. These lines are pronounced by the character of Merlin in British filmmaker John Boorman's 1981 movie Excalibur, aimed at drawing the attention of the confused crowd and transform it into an ordered public, finally ready for an important message. In a way, this word reminds us a famous incipit or beginning used by William Shakespeare as for Act 1, Scene 2 of his Julius Caesar. There, the character Casca cries out, "Peace ho, Caesar speaks." These words of Merlin convey a truth that all human beings need to face. The doom of humans is that they forget. The movie Excalibur tells once again the myth of King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table in one of its several literary variants. In this case, Boorman took inspiration from the 15th century romance La Mort d'Arthur by Anglo-Norman author Sir Thomas Malory. When we refer to the Arthurian matter as a myth, we do not, of course, mean that it is a lie. We mean an inspiring tale that has something fundamental to teach on ultimate realities. And in fact, the Arthurian myth refers to things as they ought to be, but they are not. A dream that can come true, but it doesn't, because evil breaks in. It conveys a sense of longing for beauty, fullness, and perfection that could be our human ideal condition, but that we have lost. This is also the common thread that can be seen in many spiritual traditions as one of the key features of religious experience. Romanian-American historian of religion Mircea Eliade, among others, described it as a nostalgia for paradise. We have lost that land of purity that, to go back to Ovid, youth symbolizes, because oldness in Ovid's term devoured it, seemingly in a way that made it go away forever. But it is not. It is here that one of the most serious sins human beings may commit, and one of the most precise strikes that evil may blow to us, come in. Forgetfulness, as Merlin said. Time really devours everything if we let it destroy also our memory, our remembrance of the things as they ought to be and should be, our nostalgia of paradise. If we, in turn, manage to defeat time as the devourer of our memory, paradise is not lost. If we save our spiritual youth from the spiritual oldness that wants to grab it, not all is lost. Yes, an entire generation of Taiji Mendizi have been stolen their youth, but their time would have been wasted only if they would have allowed themselves to be defeated by Ovid's hateful old age, which corresponds to the rogue and corrupt bureaucrats who persecuted them. Instead, these maintained their hopes that things can still be as they ought to be. Anglo-American poet T.S. Eliot took years to write the long poem, called Scene One, that was published in 1830 as Ash Wednesday. In number 4 of the poem, he reminds us, quote, redeem the time, redeem the unread vision in the higher dream, end of quote. There is a way to defeat time. It is by cultivating our purest and noblest aspirations. Yes, an entire generation of Taiji Mendizi have been denied the biological time of their youth, but they have not and will not be stolen the beautiful youth of their heart and spirit unless they surrender the hopes that make them what they are. And they don't. Our contribution to their perpetual youth is the cultural fight we are engaged in to restore justice to them. A small but important anticipation of a paradise that has not been lost. Thank you.
Thank you to Marco for his conclusions, although by video, but very clear and persuasive. And thanks to all the participants. And as usual, we conclude with a video, the second part of a concert which was performed by Taiji Mendizi in the Swiss mountain villa, which was a property the Taiji men couldn't use because of the injustice vested on them, and was finally given back to them in a dilapidated state. I take this opportunity to greet all participants, as in a few minutes I should leave for another commitment, and I'm sure we will see each other again in the next Taiji Men webinars. So thank you, but before leaving, let's enjoy the video.
May the agonizing pain felt over the past 27 years may be transformed into love that fosters Taiwan's human rights and encourages tax and legal reforms. May human rights persecution cease. May everyone enjoy a happy and fulfilling life. We express gratitude for the amazing grace from the heavens above. Thank you for the ones safeguarding justice along the way.